All right, cool. Ashley, well, thank you. I appreciate your time coming on today and doing this with us. First, tell us a little about yourself, right? How did you get started in this business? About your law firm, whatever you want to tell us would be great.
Yeah, sure. So I always tell people it starts way back from when I was like 12. I started working when I was really young and I had a lot of jobs. And so when I was going into school from high school onward, I knew that I wanted to be first informed about business. And then, secondly, I ended up going to law school as one, a hedging market because it was around 2008, and two, I wanted to challenge myself because there's no attorneys in my family. I'm the first attorney in my family, and I really felt like going to law school would be something that if I could do that, I could do anything. So it was not exactly a career path I was like put into from a young age, but I knew that I wanted to challenge myself. And when I was in law school, I realized I had like this eureka moment. I can start a law firm. I can combine my desire to start a business with being a lawyer. So already from when I was in law school, I knew I was going to come out and start a law firm. And one of the biggest things for me was having control over the experience of the internal runnings of the business and the external, like the client service aspect and how customers and clients are treated. And that was something that always like bogged my mind when I was working for other companies, that there was just this detachment from the people who own the companies and how the clients were being treated or how the employees were being treated. So a big passion for me was having like control over all of that. And when I was in law school, I realized that I wanted to do something local and that was involved in the community. So when I first started my law practice, I did a couple different areas of law and found that I loved real estate so much. One, the opportunity that it creates as a business and a wealth building tool. Two, the kind of like spiritual journey that people have to go on when they embark on real estate, whether you're just a home buyer going from, beginning to end, or you're an investor, which is literally like you have to go through this whole inner journey to become successful. So I loved that about real estate. And I also realized the market needed an attorney who was young, vibrant, passionate, different, willing to leverage technology, and also be like emotionally intelligently connected to the clients. So that's a really big thing that's important to me and has continued to stay important since I started the practice.
Awesome. So your feelings, I think this is really cool that you're basically like, I needed to be a more connected owner, like bad customer service. So did you, through your history of jobs,
Mhm.
did you work for any law firms? You just worked for companies that you felt like this owner is kind of detached and he's not involved in the day to day and isn't really helping this business grow, at least like with the customer relationship standpoint.
Yeah, so from a young age, I didn't work at law firms. I worked at like a boat dock, was my first job. Then I worked at a movie theater. And then I was actually in sales at Ralph Lauren for a really long time. I worked with them in men's sales from like the end of high school all the way through the end of my law school career. So that was like a very continuous thread throughout my life as a job. I was able to do it part time and make good money. But I came out of law school and worked for a law firm. I worked for one law firm before starting my own. And that is probably the cherry on top of me realizing that there was a need for customer service. I recognized that attorney that I had worked for, he's awesome. I really liked working for him, and he knew that I was coming to like learn from him how to run a practice.
Okay.
But I could tell the different ways that he was communicating with clients, or the different types of emotions clients were bringing to him, and how he was responding to them. I was always like listening, thinking, how would I handle that, or would I do that different, or what is he doing that works well? And so I was already thinking about that. And then when I was researching building a practice, I was going on a lot of like user platforms like Reddit, where people can make comments about their experiences, and just seeing like, oh, my attorney never called me back, or I never heard from my lawyer, or I called and I actually didn't like that every time I called they were there, because then it made me feel like they were they weren't busy, you
Yeah.
know? So like all
Can't
these
win.
different insights, you know, coming from the direct words of the client that were like really valuable in figuring out what they need.
It's kind of funny that people feel that way. You really sometimes you can't win. Like my attorney's so
I
busy,
know.
great, they're never available. But wait, they're so available. Are they not busy? Like what's going on?
I know. You really can't win. You just got to do your
Five-star
best.
but that's
Yeah.
awesome. So I feel like, a lot of people that we end up connecting with through these interviews, and it's awesome to know this about your background that you just worked so many jobs. Like everybody just seems to be such hustlers in this business. Like I don't really ever find anyone who came from money and
Yeah.
got into this business. Now I'm sure like they're out there, but even like my clients that I work with, most of them are just like people who were like, I'm going to try this real estate thing. Like I'm going to get involved in this, or their friend was doing it. Let me try to flip a house. And they have
Mhm.
some pretty big portfolios now. So
Yeah, I think there's a statistic about the self-made that most people who have a lot of money are actually self-made. And there's so much so much roots and so much history to their decision to want to go out and like do something on their own. And it's a lot of hard work and they don't have a lot of support, you know, and they create it for themselves. And it's really inspirational.
it's interesting because I have some pretty wealthy friends that I went to school with, and just like their demeanor versus other people's, and
Mhm.
they're not even like, it's not done on purpose, right? Like a few of my friends were like, we're going to hustle, we're going to start businesses, we're going to do all this stuff. And then they got older and maybe they didn't realize like how wealthy some of their parents were, because now it does have that like I don't know, like one of my friends, and I'm sorry if he's listening here, I just won't mention his name, but like he
Yeah.
did get something for his house, and his parents were just like, oh, how much is that? Like we'll just like send you a check. And he even said like it was a very awkward feeling at the time because he like had expected to like go and earn and do this stuff. Like he never thought like he was going to rely on his parents, and he still doesn't really rely on them, but it's
Right.
more of them poking their nose in now. Like
Yes.
they're like, no, let me pay for that. Like don't worry about it. Like we're okay. Like you shouldn't have to work harder to get that. So now I
Yes.
just my like hustling friends have just like
Mhm.
mellowed out, and they're looking at me eh, like I'm jealous of you, and I'm kind of like,
Right.
wait, I'm jealous of you. Like you don't really.
Yeah.
I wish like I had some of those things, and they're like, no, 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 you don't want like. It's kind of funny how it's like brought them down a little bit. They're like, you don't want
Yeah.
this. Like it's a whole different. It's weird. Like to
Yeah, it like short circuits your digging within yourself to realize the power that you have to create what you want in your life, right?
yep,
And it's like if someone else is like, "Oh, you need that? Here, you know, you can have it. It's right
right,
there." That like short circuits that process that you have to go through, which is you know, it could take time to go through like that digging process of like finding like within yourself the power to go out and get what you want. Like that could take, you know, a week of visualization and like hemming and hawing, you know.
yeah.
But if someone just has it for you right there, it's a little hard to turn away from that because our bodies and our brains are very efficient, right? We're going to be like, well, whatever the path of least resistance is.
It's tough because now when like I have two kids, and I start to think like, how will I keep this that my parents like so my parents helped me as much as they could, but it was always like get a job, do your own thing, like, and I became very independent due to that. So how do
Yeah.
you like, I mean, it's not a parenting podcast, which is parenting advice,
That's okay.
right? But
I mean, you can think
like,
about it with team members too, like employees and people you're training. How much do you give to them and also let them grow?
yeah, you definitely don't want to give it all to them because then they expect it all, right? Like you have to let them
Yes.
do some stuff and fail. And I feel like my parents definitely did that on purpose to me at times. Like my dad was always, anytime I had this idea, he'd be like, well, go try it. And I'd,
Mhm.
wait, really? Like, do you think it's a good idea? He said, well, go try it. And then I would fail, and he'd be like, yeah, it wasn't a good idea. But like, I wasn't going to tell you that it wasn't a good idea. I wanted you to actually go try it. So that way you
Right.
find out on your own to learn.
I love that. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Everything. My dad was definitely big on like, he let me do whatever I wanted. Like,
Yeah.
obviously within reason. But like, remember I bought a car, it was a crappy car. And I was like, Dad, this is a good idea. He was like, yeah, sure, buy the car. And then like, the car broke down, and it was like, see, next time
Really letting you learn your own lessons.
I kind of want to talk to you a little bit about your practice. You have done a very good job of like a automated, systemized practice, right? So tell us about that. How did that come about? What drove you to do that, right? You were working for a firm that I'm assuming were not as process driven and systemized as you are, because I know it is something you are very focused on. So how'd that come?
Luckily, the gentleman that I worked for, he was very tech savvy. So I did learn some things from him on how to leverage technology to a certain point. Real estate was a part of his practice, but not the full. It wasn't everything he did. He did other areas of law. So his firm was a little bit more. I'd say the systems were a little bit more open in that aspect. But when I started, I knew that if I got really busy, I would burn out. And I knew that if I got really busy and I started to burn out, that would limit my ability to be of service to my clients and referral partners, and that it would end up jeopardizing and sabotaging my business. So from the beginning, I wanted to make sure that as I was doing things, I was cataloging what I was doing so that I could teach someone else and have them help me. And the way to do that, the only way to do that, if it's not on pen and paper, is with systems and technology. So I was constantly like looking for good softwares to use to help me catalog the stages of the transaction, who does what when. Like if I have a paralegal, would they do this or would I do it? And so I was always like planning that in the background while I was building the practice. And I'd say that that's something that is never ending. Like there's still so many things I haven't codified that I wish I did. And I'm always thinking like, gosh, if I wish I just had that written down, it'd be easier. So it's something that if people are listening, like, and you're going to embark on this, like, just know that it never ends. Like there's no finished product. And it might change, right? So I used like Asana. I looked for some legal softwares. There's a bunch of different ones out there. But I finally found one that I love that's designed for real estate attorneys specifically. And you've had to use it when working with us, called Track with Ease.
Yep.
So I'm looking to build out systems that'll help people learn how to use that better with us, because it's something that, like, when someone's plugged into that as like a client or a lender or a title company, they can utilize it to their advantage too. So that's something I have on the back burner. But yeah, building out systems and being automated is one, to help me from burning out, and then my staff from burning out, and trying to take all of the things that we know are predictable and putting them into a system and a process so that we can free our minds up to be able to help clients with the things that can't be systematized, which are the problems that happen, the fires that have to be put out, the negotiations that need to be taken care of. Like, we need our brain power available to take care of those things, not admin stuff, right?
That's so, like, the self-awareness there. First off, I can't stop thinking about that you thought about that before you started, that it was like, I'm going to need systems because I might burn out. I was exactly the opposite. I was just, I'm going to run through every single wall that's put up in front of me, and that's going to be successful. Like, there was no question. Like, for me, when I got into hard money, it was, I worked for a hard money lender. So I learned how hard money worked from being a borrower and then working for a lender. So I felt like I had this different sort of take on what hard money could be. And I felt like it was really more like, not that they weren't doing a bad job of it, but like, I can do this on my own. And you kind of talk about like freeing your mind, which hit me with I have a pretty good memory, I feel. So I can remember a lot of the details, but I really do feel bogged down when I'm trying to remember them, right? So what did free my mind was my first CRM was a notebook, and just wrote down, like, I would be like, you would call me for a deal and I would have like a page for your deal, and I'd write and then move to the next page and the next page, and then I'd be like, oh wait, like, Ashley's got a deal. And I'd like flip back 5 pages, like, let me call her, let me bring this up, or I'm writing more notes. And it was definitely like way more efficient than most other people were, at least, right? When I worked at the prior lender, we had a CRM, and I was the only one that really even used the CRM from like a follow-up perspective. So I learned to follow up through my notebook. But I'm the kind of person where, like, when I'm going to bed, I start to think about things like, oh, wait, like, I have to do this for my tenant. That, like, and then like I can't sleep because I start thinking about it. But if I just get up and go write it down, it's off my mind. And once I created the CRM, which actually came in part because I had, well, COVID, by the way, that was a huge, like COVID, like people talk about how bad COVID was, and I don't want to take anything away from, the sickness and the, like, just like that negative horribleness of it. But like, I was like, I have nothing to do. Like, people aren't
Right.
giving me money. Like, I got to start calling people. And I created this. That's when the CRM came to life. That was, I was like, okay, I'm going to sit at home. I'm going to put everybody in the CRM. I'm going to keep track of all this stuff. And I started to
Yes.
create workflows and all these things. And
Which, when would you have the time to do that before, right? It's like
exactly.
this little space was created, and that's awesome that you took advantage of that. Because I know, Netflix also exploded at the time.
I became a psychopath during COVID. I went like the other way. I worked out every single day. I worked in my business every single day. Like, I
Yeah.
was scared, like completely scared.
Yeah.
Like, am I going to like move forward? Like, there was no time for me to relax and watch Netflix. Uh,
Right.
I mean, definitely did do my fair share. I'll be honest. Like,
Yeah. I think we all did.
but it's so funny because like so many things you're saying, it, to that point that we had just touched on here, is when you're running your business, when do you continue to put those systems in? Because now you're like, I got to run this business, but I got to put the systems in. Like, where do you find that time? So I mean, I find myself, like, again, taking notes,
Yeah.
talking with Gurley, like, here's what I'm thinking, like, where's, like, what's an issue for you? Like, why did that go wrong for you? Like, we've got to be able to fix that. And a lot of times, again, it's like, I did this business, I started this business, so I don't feel like I need the workflow so much. Like, I can find myself, like, I can find the quick workaround. So I'm
Right.
always communicating with her to say, like, why is that wrong? Like, what
Right.
didn't you get about that? Because that's a fault of mine for not getting it off my brain and onto a piece of paper or into your brain somehow. So
Yes.
do you have
Yeah, and
those
having
kind
a team and growing a team certainly like expands you so much more than when you're by yourself, because you can get away with just doing it on your own and keeping it in your head and kind of just dealing with it, and you don't have anybody to really like be accountable to or answer to. And now that I have a team, like I started shifting from only worrying about clients to now being like, I want my staff to be happy. So like now I'm worried about them too. And I'm like, wow, okay. So I have like all more responsibility, right? And it sounds like for you too, it's the same thing. It's like, okay, I could have gotten away with that, or that wouldn't have bothered me, or I would have just handled it. But how do I fix that for your person, right? For your person who's helping you, for your assistant. And I think having consistent, like open communication with your staff is huge and can really help dig into those things. And sometimes it can be hard because people don't want to speak up. They don't feel like it's safe to say like, oh, this isn't working for me, because you're their boss, right? So doing whatever you can to create that open dialogue to be like, no, I want this to work for you. So like if this isn't working, or if you need something from me, please like tell me. It's okay. Like I'm not going to be like hurt.
Well, it's funny because like I'm definitely a clown. Like, as a boss, like I'm not like a very serious. Like, I'm serious when like we need to get stuff done. But like throughout the
Yeah.
day, like I feel like you should feel like you can approach me, like
Yes.
singing throughout the day and stuff. Like they always think, like Gurley makes fun of me about it, like
I
when things come about. But
like that.
when when Andrea started working with us, she does a lot of our marketing, and she's, will edit this video, right? So she was definitely nervous at first to say things to me about how I was acting or moving in the video. And
Mhm.
like when she first said, she was like, oh, she was like it was just like so sweet about it. I was like, if I'm screwing up, you have to tell me. Like, I have no idea. Like, I don't know
Right.
whether I look good in this video or not right now. Did I move too much? Or I used to do the, I'd adjust,
Yeah.
and I just like the video would be like my head popping in and out of the video, but
Yeah.
I had no idea. Right. And
Mhm.
nobody told me that before. Because when we first started, we had a third party was doing the videos for us. So we put it out, they would just edit it and send it back, and they
Yeah.
did a great job. But now that she's actually on our team, there's a lot more open communication with it to say like, hey, you're moving too much, or you're very quiet, like, because they hear me talk to my clients. Like, I have very good dialogue with them, but a lot of times when I get caught up in these videos, it's like you almost get nervous.
Yeah.
It's just having this team, having that open communication, saying this needs to be fixed. Why are we doing this? And I completely agree. Like, if they don't feel comfortable, like they don't. We've all had bad jobs where it's like, don't say anything to that guy. Like he
Right.
will yell at you, and then you're like,
Right.
this job sucks. I can't say that to him with this thing. So it just becomes not fun for you. And honestly, I'm sure not fun for the guy who's even yelling, right? Like he should
Yeah.
yell us if he knew some of the things that were wrong.
Yeah. No hostile work environments. We don't want any of that.
Let's talk a little about like being a lawyer, right? And in
Yeah.
this business. So one big thing that I get a lot, and clients just want to save money. They're looking to cut a corner everywhere. And like you're one of the first people to get chopped, right? Because what do I need a lawyer for? I have a title company. My lawyer doesn't do anything but really read the documents. And
Right.
like honestly, like I don't even need them to read the documents because title has to read the documents and make sure title's clear. So if title's clear, I'm safe, we've got insurance. What do we need Ashley for?
Right.
So I feel like there's two different parts to this answer, maybe, and I don't want to like tell you how to answer it, but like there's probably a retail question answer and an investor answer, right? So
Yeah.
the investors are definitely trying to cut you out. I would love to hear you work with retail because it's probably a little bit more hand holding, right? Like you're definitely an education and for them for that at least, right?
Yeah. Yeah. For retail, I think it's a little more, I guess it's less of an uphill battle with retail, especially because we're just so ingrained in the process. It's like in the contract already that it's subject to attorney review and that you should have it studied by an attorney. And the realtors, especially in Northern New Jersey, are pushing us. So they want us there to protect themselves too. So there's like kind of this understanding that we're meant to be there. I think for sellers, maybe it's a little less like of a need than a buyer. Buyer's a little more scared and kind of like lost with what they need to do, and they do need that hand holding. And sellers, on the other hand, kind of feel like they can probably do it on their own from a mentality standpoint, generalizing. But we definitely don't feel like we have to sell ourselves as much with buyers and sellers on the retail side. With investors, what I recognize is for newer investors who the thing is first recognizing where they're coming from. So like a lot of investors are coming into the market from taking a course from some guru somewhere, right? And that guru is in a state where lawyers aren't used. So they're not even talking about the lawyer component. But when they enter New Jersey, then all of a sudden this like lawyer variable gets thrown in there, and maybe they try someone out and then they get burned because that attorney wasn't available, or they just kind of pushed papers and they didn't really do much. And then the client's like, well, I paid this guy $1,200 or this woman $1,200, right? And like they didn't like do anything necessarily for me. So there's like there's a couple different threads going on of either you're just not coached that it would be good to have someone because it's not common in other states. And then there's the other aspect of like just getting burned and not having a good experience. So when we're talking to investors who come from either of those worlds, we really try to throw out the like, how are we different from that person that you worked with, and like just this is what our philosophy is, and this is how we see us as an integral part of your transaction. And one, we break it down with numbers because sometimes it is like you said, saving money and it's just numbers. And if you think about like if someone's wholesaling and they plan to make $1 million, throughout the course of the year through with all of their transactions, what is, if $1 million was broken apart into 8 deals, what is, $1,500 of an attorney fee packed into that $1 million, revenue? Like, is that really a big deal at the end of the day? So when you break down the numbers, sometimes that just shifts them to recognize like, oh, it's actually not as much as I thought it was. When they think of it on a per deal basis, it's like, wow, that's a lot. But overall, it's really not as much. And then secondly is we are literally not just reading contracts, but we're negotiating, on your behalf and thinking of strategy. So I can only like really touch upon this with examples of where we've been able to step in and like flip something around for someone where they realize like, wow, I'm so glad you were here. So one example is when a couple of investor clients that we had before they started working with us, they were collecting deposits, and they were collecting deposits from their end buyers, but immediately using that deposit for the underlying contract. So they didn't have a deposit for their assignment, like the obligation of the assignee to perform. So if that assignee breached the contract, and the money was held back by the seller because of the breach, then our client was screwed on both ends, because now they don't have their deal going through. And then this person screwed them over, but they also don't have anything for themselves. So we coach them to put this liquidated damages clause in, to have a deposit, one for the underlying contract, and then another one for the assignment contract. So that's one. And then another situation was when there's no attorney involved in the transaction. And this, a lot of our clients are wholesalers, so I'm kind of using these examples, but having the end buyer like try to loop around and try to communicate with the seller side. So trying to create barriers to the communication with the seller side, and strategizing on how to make sure that those barriers are in place. Like we're kind of we go beyond the scope of what's in the contract to help them protect their deal, and do so in a way where we consider ourselves like a partner to them in the success of the transaction. And then you throw the hard money lender in there, right? And then the attorney gets involved when things get close to closing, and title isn't going to, like potentially negotiate with the lender attorney as to what might be needed on a deal or not. Like, does this document that you're saying needs to be signed, does it really need to be signed? Like, the title company is not there to protect you in the deal. They're there to protect you with your ownership once after you close. Like, they're not even your insurer until you close. So like, you're kind of their client, but not yet, not until you pay the premium. So, and they're just protecting themselves as the insurer there. So we have conversations.
They're just looking out for themselves throughout
exactly.
But you said, you touched on something there. The negotiation and the lender, right? Like when we see a deal as the lender and it's just the client who is going to use a title company, we immediately like roll our eyes. We're like, oh gosh, like this is going to be a disaster.
Mm-hmm.
The client might not realize it, but the attorney really does help being like, middle person's not there. Like attorneys seem to like to work with other attorneys.
Mm-hmm.
So when the lender's attorney knows that there's an attorney involved, like they're happy to go and speak to you. You guys talk the same language. It's very smooth. Otherwise, you're going back and forth between a title company who, like you said, like really doesn't have a horse in the race except for let's get this closed so we get paid.
Right.
And we're just going to protect ourselves, right? When we come to closing, and excuse me, a lot of times we have people sign now. You would probably know this better than I would know the term of it, but basically like pledging the shares.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And
yes,
it's not really a requirement. And we bring it up and we let them know, but there are plenty of times at closing we get attorneys that are like, wait a second, like there's a pledge of shares here, this is what it means to you. Like title never would have told them what a pledge of shares is, why that we're doing it, and we try to do our best to relay it, but they're not listening to us, and they're probably not even really listening to title, to be honest. They're listening to you, guys, and trusting you.
Yeah. And then, I mean, if there's multiple partners, like if there's an operating agreement that says one of them isn't subject to pledging their shares, like, because we draft operating agreements for our clients, and sometimes we'll throw that in there if someone's like a silent investor in the LLC, but they're really not like sharing in the risk. They're just a member. And so, having to pay attention to those details, like nobody's going to pick up on that. And you could just get steamrolled and you don't even know it. That's happening to you without having someone who's really invested in protecting you and advocating for you, because nobody else's insurance is like malpractice insurance, right, is on the line to give you proper advice, but your lawyer. So like, it's really important. And I feel like because of the environment we're in, we can use this example. It's like way back when you would go out to like a club in New York or something, and there's this really long line, and like if you go without your lawyer, right, or you go without being on the list, you're going to be at the back and you're going to get like, screwed over, right? You may not even enter the club at some point, but if you have like your name on the list, the person, you've got someone like bringing you in there, the attorney can like make things much smoother. And really, like you said, attorneys like to talk to attorneys. It's almost like having that, like the pass, right? Like, oh, here's my lawyer card. So like we can get things done just by saying we're the attorney on the deal. And like paying for that is almost priceless sometimes, because if the title company tries to make a call on your behalf, which I don't see why they ever would, but if they did and they're not a lawyer, like no one's going to listen to them to like take them seriously, so to speak. Also, that like you don't have people or anyone like sitting there ready to perhaps, let's say the seller's trying to breach the contract, like jumping on that and potentially filing the court papers to protect you and your interest in the deal. Like there's just so many little things, that landmines that can come up, and if you don't have someone there to like, protect you from them, it's it's very risky. Let's just put it that way.
I tell people like, oh, an attorney's $1,500, let's just say, right? Like, yeah, it's 1,500 extra dollars, but if you do, 10 deals a year, like let's say if one of those deals go bad, they're going to save you more than $15,000 at the end of the day.
Right.
Like you were saying, it's liquidated damages, or being ready to hop on and, make sure that that deal that you're getting at such a good price, the seller all of a sudden realizes, and they try backing out because now they want to sell it for 30,000 more. Right there, that pays for 20 deals worth of my attorney, right? Like this is why we want them involved. And like you said, to the point of like a title company calling and just having the conversation, which they probably wouldn't, like you said, but again, attorneys just have this, it's great. It's like, it's just a bond, right? Like, hey, look, my client wants to negotiate this. And I know you guys are both looking in for your best interest for each of your client, but that conversation goes a lot smoother. You at least can be like, I've got an annoying client. He thinks he gets $5,000. We both know that that's ridiculous, but 2,500 is probably really fair. He's like, or she on the other end is like, yeah, that's good point. 2,500 will probably work. Let me go explain that to my client. And then they can explain it, and they're the the go-to, the expert, and they trust them. But yet if we didn't have either of you two and we're just talking, I'd be like, I want $5,000. I'd be like, F you can't, zero. And
right. It's almost like we take what you want and we package it in a way that gets the result that you desire.
Yep.
But like if you went to go try to ask for it yourself, like you're not going to get it, because you're going to have emotions and all of these other things that you're like wrapping into it. And there's, every word matters with when, like how you're approaching certain things and how you're packaging it and asking the other side or communicating with the lender attorney or the title company. And that finessing, takes a lot of time to sometimes like package the right way. And even beyond that, a lot of investors will have, especially as they grow, they have teams, right? And they have like the distributions and the acquisitions managers, and they have like the transaction coordinator. And maybe they don't have a transaction coordinator, but if they don't have an attorney, they're going to be the ones following up with title, following up with the lender. Like, and do they have the bandwidth to do that? Like, what are they paying that person? They may be paying them a salary or an independent contractor fee. So, if you're paying that person $1,500 a month, you might as well pay your lawyer to get that aspect plus, the protection.
Yeah. You're like labor now almost, right?
Right.
You get the job done and the protection now on top of it, and to know that it's going to get done right. Kind of funny. I don't know if you see this from your side, but a lot of people who don't want attorneys are the first one to say, I'm going to sue you. They're negotiating. They're like, oh, I'll sue you. It's like, wait, you didn't even want to pay the $1,500 for the guy to represent you. You wouldn't have to be in this threatening position if you paid the attorney fee at the end of the day. But here you are yelling, I'm going to sue you.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I'm not too quite sure, what it is, but I do see that happening a lot, like that energy coming from like the other side if there's no lawyer. And then if we are there and the other side doesn't have a lawyer, that can be even, more complicated. So we always tell our clients, like, if your seller doesn't have an attorney, we highly recommend that you encourage them to hire a lawyer. Like, we're going to have the correspondence that, like, we have basically a disclaimer every time we send out an email to the other side if there's no lawyer, saying, like, we're not representing you, like, there's this whole thing, and always encouraging them that anytime they can loop in a lawyer on their end. And it can definitely make the deal smoother when there's two attorneys involved versus just one. But at least if there is one, there's someone looking at everything. So
Do you ever get leveraged by the other side to try to like use you as well in a sense of like document wise? Because now all of a sudden you're the attorney keeping the wheels on.
yeah, for sellers docs, we'll draft them and have the title company approve them and then go over them with the clients, like that type of thing. We would be willing to do, but we're not providing, any legal advice or communication with the client. We may draft the sale docs and that's it. We won't do anything else, with respect to the seller side, if there is a seller on the other side.
Okay, cool.
Mhm.
So where do you see your firm going? What do you guys like? What's next for you besides putting some more processes in place? But
Yeah, always, right?
yeah.
So I definitely plan on the next year. So 2023 for us is going to be big push on long form education content. Looking to do podcasts also. So being here is really exciting for me, and just a push in that direction. Also looking to have more events, more online events providing education. And we're continuing to do real estate and transactions, but I am designing a course for investors as well that I'll be launching that will be good for a seasoned investor, a new investor, it doesn't matter, but will prepare them to see the value of working with a lawyer and already be prepared to have their deals be smoother. And it's something that's going to be really jam-packed with like a lot of information, templates, things that they can use to make their deals more successful. Because some of these contracts that I get, I'm just like, what is this? Where did this come from? Is this from another state? Like, is this from Alabama? What is this? So really trying to level up the entire community by putting out my knowledge wherever I can.
Awesome. Yeah, I love educating people all the time. I just think that
Yeah.
it just makes, selfishly at times makes your job easier, right? The more you can provide for them, the smoother it's going to be at the end of the day. So listen, in any of your
I think give
education,
back too.
that's, yeah, I mean, sometimes I forget how much I know as I'm moving forward and just trying to tell other people. I mean, I also run a networking group. We meet twice a month for investors. And I'm just always trying to, like, we don't charge, we do the same stuff that these guys that charge like $500 at a level tour or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
We don't do anything like, I mean, maybe ours isn't as cool and as organized as that is because they're charging, but one weekend we went to one of our investors' houses. We did like 5 of his houses and just showed them like all from like literally we're at one house where there's a hole in the ground to
Yeah.
houses that were finished.
Oh,
So
that's awesome. That's such good education and such a good experience. And the fact that you're doing it, like, that's literally for the community. So that's
yeah,
amazing. I think I saw your Instagram post from that and it's like ingrained in my memory. So that's awesome that you did that. It's really
we'd
cool.
love to have you sometime if you ever,
Sure.
so it'd be cool.
Yeah. Send me the info, please. I would love to join.
We really appreciate you coming on. If you want to drop some, how we can contact you, and we'll also put in the show links and stuff like that and tag you on Instagram, all those kinds of things. But
Yeah, I would say the best way to probably either, whether it's if you're contacting me just to contact me, is through Instagram, just say, hey, hello, introduce yourself. If you want to have a consultation, of course, my email is best. So my Instagram is at real estate law NJ. And then my email is ashley@molsonlawfirm.com. So if you want to have an actual consultation, email's good, but otherwise follow me on Instagram. I post new things every day.
awesome. Thank you, Ashley. We really
Thank
appreciate it.
you. Yes, this was awesome. Thank you so much. And I'm glad I got to know more about you too.
Yeah, of course. Anytime.